You're watching everything. And I would say, by and large, when I read your recaps at thefandc.com, not overwhelmingly positive. Every once in a while, there's a day where, like, Haskins shines, the quarterbacks are okay. But it's been kind of a turnover fest lately, right?
Yeah, the last 2 days have been really bad. I think the offense was better early, but that was also the install period where they can somewhat design it to work. Hey, we're going to put in our plays. We're going to put in, we're going to use it or, defensively design defenses that we would call this play against, or at the very least that we know we have a good option against. Now the whole playbook's open. And that goes for the defensive coaches, too, so they can kind of call what they want. Obviously, it's still scripted to a point, but they want, and it's up to the quarterbacks to go execute, and they haven't really at any kind of acceptable level. Colts, I think, still been the best of the three. Case is not far behind. Dwayne's pretty far behind. But even the last 2 days, the two veterans, they're throwing these balls over the middle. We've talked about it ad nauseum with Dwayne, that he's throwing all these balls over the middle that are going to get his guys killed. Case and Colt are doing that too, and you can't. As a veteran, you know better. And, there was a live period the other day where Dwayne threw one of those, and they were live, and the receiver got crushed. Yesterday, Monte Nicholson and Landon Collins both pulled up, so they didn't end a receiver. And so that kind of stuff can't happen. And then the interceptions. You've got to not get picked off. You can't throw balls where you don't see a safety or you don't see a linebacker. Case's interception yesterday was a little bit more unlucky. A linebacker who was playing at the line of scrimmage jumped up and caught it. It was a really nice play. It's not like you didn't see him. You just got to get the ball over him. It probably, in most cases, is a tip pass. It was a really nice play by DJ Blunt, the third-string inside linebacker. But overall, that kind of stuff still, those plays are what kills you. And right now, I would just call a lot of handoffs if I were Jay Gruden, considering how the last couple of days went.
Craig, it's pretty clear. It's obvious that Jay Gruden more as a backup if he had a solid guy to trot out as the number one. Give me the three things that he loves about Colt McCoy. 1, 2, and 3.
I think Jay sees a little. Number one, let's go list style. Number one, I think Jay sees a little bit of himself in Colt in terms of how they see the game, the risk, the willingness to take a risk every now and then, but super cerebral, gets how everything is supposed to work. I think that's number one. I think two is toughness. Unquestionably, Colt is a guy that's been through a lot, even if most of it's been behind the scenes. His professionalism / toughness, if you want to call the professionalism mental toughness, the Kirk Robert days where he's the third guy in the room just going, what am I in the middle of? And he at times was a peacekeeper in that room. I've talked to Colt about this, and he hasn't told me the stories, but he's simply gone, man, if I want to write a book one day, it's going to be a heck of a book. So I think that's part of it. And then I think number three is intrigue. So what I mean by that is I think Jay has got a lot of self-confidence in his own ability to call plays and scheme offense. And to a point, he kind of thinks anyone he puts in can do it. And the guy who has kind of been that guy for 6 years at this point is Colt. Like, hey, I don't care if it's Robert, Kirk, Colt. And the other two obviously got their chances. And with Kirk, it went pretty well. Colt's never really stayed healthy long enough to see if, if a guy knows my system and knows how to then it'll work. And I think the intrigue of seeing what Colt could actually be with extended reps and time and health and all that kind of stuff, I think is what Jay wants to see, part for Colt, because we all want to see what it's like for Colt just to kind of know. A guy that went through so much early in his career and never, once he finally got healthy off that shoulder injury for college, which took years, what's it look like? But also I think in Jay's mind for himself, there's something deep inside of him that says, yeah, I can do this with Colt McCoy. Watch me.
So you say that Colt is slightly ahead of Case, but that's kind of flip-flopped from where we were when we were down there, because you told us, I think, on Wednesday that you thought that Case was slightly ahead of Colt at that point, right?
Yeah, I think that I might have had that one backwards and this is where it becomes really hard to evaluate from the sideline, and especially also getting kind of your football eyes back, where you got to make sure you really know what you're looking for because you haven't seen anything close to football in a while. So the more I started talking to people on their side of things, obviously, the more I went, no, I have seen that. Okay, that makes sense. Colts ahead. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing was really that the ball was coming out way faster. The processing was so much faster. I think it was pretty close at the point you guys were here, and I still think it is pretty close. But now that I've kind of had a couple more days, and the other thing too was, Colt is still getting back health-wise. And I kind of have a small working theory that he's not going to play on Thursday. That he's going to be held out one more week, considering his health is still not 100%, and Jay's kind of bizarre answer yesterday to how he's going to split the quarterback time in games, that he said not all of them are going to play necessarily, which I thought was very interesting, considering you'd think they want all the data they can get in terms of game reps. But I wonder if Colt sits this one out, Case gets like a full quarter, Dwayne gets a full quarter, then they shut it down and let Woodrum take a half or whatever, and then kind of give all the main guys more extended reps in the second game, and Woodrum doesn't play at all for the next two. So back to just the order, I think that Colt processes faster, and for an O-line that at times is obviously going to struggle with the left side being what it currently is, the ability to see blitzes, know where the ball is supposed to go, and get it out is really important, and I think that's where Colt is significantly ahead of Case in this offense at this point.
Craig, I saw the video of you sitting down with Paul Richardson, who's in his second year now with the Redskins, and it strikes me every time I see him. He's so tiny. He's so just slight. Like, I can understand why he's having a hard time staying on the field because that guy can't weigh more than 170 pounds. Where is he health-wise at this point, and what sort of projections do we have for him as far as how big he is in this offense going forward?
TB Cakes, it's not just that I'm jacked.
Yeah, that's clearly it, too.
It's a video. We finally have video. Give me a little credit here.
No, he's props, yeah.
He's very slender. He and Greg Stroman, I'm not quite sure how they play NFL football because they are so thin. But Richardson, I'm intrigued. I think that he really does care about the right things, and like his mental makeup would drive him to be successful if he can just stay on the field. But you're right. Like when you don't have any body fat or muscle to protect your bones, like no wonder his shoulder got hurt last year. It makes sense in that way, and I feel awful saying that because Paul is such a good dude. And again, yesterday, like he was at the podium for us, and he was incredible. He's so thoughtful, and it's interesting for a guy that when they were looking at him and eventually signed him, I was talking to people who are like, man, that kid is immature. He doesn't get it. Like he's a good kid, but I don't know. And then he gets here, and we're all like kind of blown away at what a good dude he is. And not that we heard he was a bad dude, but just in terms of like the mentorship and all that kind of stuff that he's provided that receiver room and how much he gets it. So I think that smart. If he can be smart and away, like, we used to always kind of poke fun at Deshaun Jackson for catching the ball and going down, but that was the right play for him. I think Richardson's got to play the same way. Get tackled as least often as possible. For the coaching staff, keep him out of the run game if you can. You have Terry McLaurin now who can fill that speed role, but is also an insanely good blocker and is a lot more durable. So can you keep P. Rich as much as you can? You can't just only put him in on pass plays, but keep him out of the mix on run plays as often as possible. Line him up on the weak side where he doesn't really have to block, and just kind of let him play patty cake with a corner. And if you can do that, he's a guy that can, as he said yesterday at the podium, he doesn't have to have 7 catches per game because he can, where someone else, Trey Quinn, might have 7 catches for 70 yards, he could have 1 catch for 70 yards. And taking the top off is a huge role in this defense. It opens up everything underneath for Quinn, Jordan Reed, the backs, all those guys, even other receivers screaming across the middle. If they line up him and McLaurin together, like that's a lethal combination because they're both 4.3 fast. So with Richardson, I think that he's got a role to play in this offense. I think it is a more specialty role in his best version, but I actually think McLaurin might open him up to be that. And if Richardson's going to take that specialty role with the maturity that he's shown in the interview with me and that certainly seems to have, then I think he can be a really dangerous weapon for this team and stay healthy a lot longer because they're not as reliant on him to do as many things and take as many hits because, going back to your original premise, he's not built for that.
Talking to Craig Hoffman down in Richmond, our Redskins beat reporter. All right, switching to the defense. The defense clearly way ahead of the offense, and you can probably say that for a lot of teams. I know Montez Sweat got kicked in the calf, I guess, last week, so right now Anderson's ahead of him, but do you feel pretty good about the depth chart, especially in the secondary? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think they have a lot of depth in the secondary at corner. Safety, I'm a little squeamish on. That's the one that I don't really know what to make of it. I think Troy Apke's been better, but I don't think that he's been great. I think DeShazer Everett's a solid backup safety, so you're kind of 3.5 deep at safety. And they've got some other kids that have been okay. Jeremy Reeves, JoJo McIntosh have had their moments, but like JoJo McIntosh gets out there yesterday and is stuck guarding Jordan Reed, and Reed hits him with a move on an out route that creates about 12 to 15 yards of separation. And you're going, okay, that's what JoJo McIntosh looks like in an actual NFL game. That's not great. It's also not fair to put that on him because it's Jordan Reed, and he does that to some of the best in the game. But like that's the real NFL, not the third-string scrubs you've been playing most of camp against. So
real quick, Craig.
Yeah.
With Apke, you say he's been better. What is he still lacking? Because he's got speed. Does he get lost in coverage? Does he miss tackles? What exactly does he not do well?
I don't think he's got great instincts. I think he's slow to react to some stuff. And so, he'll use that speed to make up for it at times, but like he's running down people as opposed to getting there in some kind of, forceful, preemptive manner. So watching that versus Monte or especially a guy like Landon, it's different. He does a lot of chasing. When he's good at chasing, but he does a lot of chasing.
Gotcha.
And we'll have to see once we can tackle, like, can he tackle? That was a problem, at times last year as well. So, corner, though, I think the Adonis Alexander experiment is over. If he's a Redskin past opening day, it's because they put him on IR with this quad injury and tell him to get healthy, and we'll try again next year. But I think he's going to be gone, which kind of solves a mystery I've had. I think they then have 6 very solid corners that they wind up keeping. And so, yeah, other than that, defensively, I think inside linebackers kind of looked pretty solid. And obviously, defensive line looks great. Caleb Brantley does have what was deemed a mild Liz Frank. I'm not sure exactly how mild Liz Franks get. That's probably going to be a couple weeks, but still, they're at a point now where they can afford 1 or 2 on the defensive line going down, as long as it's not like 2 of Allen Ioannidis Payne, and still be okay. But I think defensively, this unit could be really good. And going back to the offense, if they run it a ton, in part because they probably are going to not want to pass it a ton, and this defense plays well, that's a formula to win. Like, that's how this team actually is better than everyone thinks. But they've got to stay disciplined and sustain it over time. Obviously, it worked in part last year until the Alex injury, the Colt injury, and then the O-line deteriorated as well. But health is going to play a huge factor in being able to do that on both sides of the ball. And so far, so relatively good. And I think Sweat's might even play on Thursday. He's fine. Was in walkthrough again by yesterday afternoon.